Welcome back to our channel, where we delve into ideas and habits that elevate our lives. Today, we'll explore one of the most underrated yet powerful tools we have: silence. In a world dominated by noise, notifications, opinions, and constant communication, silence has become rare. But I've come to realize that it's within this silence that we find our greatest strength, creativity, and clarity. Whether you're trying to improve your mental clarity, handle difficult situations, or simply tap into your inner self, silence is the key. It's not just a break from sound, it's an active force, a way to reset, reconnect, and even build resilience. In this video, I'll share how silence has transformed my life, how it's been revered by great thinkers and spiritual leaders, and practical ways you can harness its power for your own growth. Stay with me as we go deep into the concept of silence's power. Section 1. The value of silence in ancient wisdom. Before diving into personal experiences, let's first explore how ancient philosophers, spiritual leaders, and cultures perceived silence. Historically, silence has been seen as much more than the absence of sound. It was seen as a source of wisdom, an access point to the divine, and a way to cultivate inner strength. The Stoics were one of the most well-known groups that valued silence, not just as a virtue, but as a tool for mastering one's own mind. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." Silence, to the Stoics, wasn't about withdrawing from life. It was about becoming more attentive to it. They believed that through silence, we could control our emotions, think before reacting, and ultimately, live more rational lives. Similarly, in religious and spiritual practices, silence has been a cornerstone for growth and enlightenment. For centuries, monks have embraced silence through long periods of isolation or contemplative prayer. In these moments of solitude, they believed they could hear the voice of God more clearly. Silence was seen as a way to strip away the distractions of the material world and reconnect with one's true purpose. Whether it's the meditative silence of a Zen monk or the vow of silence taken by Christian monks, the goal was the same: inner peace and spiritual clarity. I often think about this connection between silence and wisdom. There was a period in my life when I was constantly chasing external validation, always filling every gap with something or someone's opinion, always busy, and always surrounded by noise. I didn't realize that I was losing touch with my own inner voice. It wasn't until I consciously introduced silence into my routine that I understood its true value. Section 2. Silence as a tool for self-reflection and growth. Silence isn't just about shutting out the external world. It's about making space to listen to your internal world, your thoughts, emotions, desires, and fears. Self-reflection is one of the most powerful ways we can grow, and it's in silence that this reflection happens most clearly. Let's talk about meditation, one of the most recognized ways to engage in silence. Meditation isn't just sitting in quiet, it's an active form of internal listening. When we meditate, we create a sacred space in our minds, free from distractions, where we can observe our thoughts without judgment. Meditation teaches us to embrace silence, not as a void, but as a presence, as a space filled with possibility. In my own journey with meditation, I initially struggled to quiet my mind. I'd sit for a few minutes, only to be overwhelmed by thoughts, worries, and distractions. But over time, I learned to welcome this mental noise. Meditation taught me that silence isn't about having no thoughts at all. It's about creating enough space to hear them and decide which ones are worth listening to. Numerous studies have shown the link between silence and self-awareness. Neuroscientists have discovered that when the brain is at rest, when there's no noise, no distractions, it switches to a default mode network. This network is active when we engage in self-reflection, daydreaming, or problem-solving. So when we allow ourselves moments of silence, we're giving our brains the time and space to process, reflect, and come up with creative solutions. There's also evidence suggesting that silence boosts neurogenesis, the formation of new brain cells. One study published in 2013 by researchers at Duke University found that 2 hours of silence per day prompted the development of new cells in the hippocampus, the region of the brain related to memory and learning. Section 3. The role of silence in emotional resilience. Next, let's explore the emotional benefits of silence. Life throws challenges at us: stress, anger, frustration, disappointment. In these moments, silence can be our greatest ally. While it's tempting to react impulsively to negative emotions, silence provides a buffer, a moment of pause that allows us to choose how to respond rather than just react. There's a powerful technique in psychology known as taking a moment of silence. It's something therapists often encourage when emotions are running high. Instead of reacting immediately to a situation, you take a moment, breathe deeply, and stay silent. This pause gives your brain the chance to process the situation more rationally. Personally, I've found that practicing silence in emotionally charged moments has made a huge difference in how I handle conflict. In the past, I would often say things in the heat of the moment that I would later regret. Now, I make a conscious effort to take a breath and stay silent, even if just for a few seconds, before responding. It's incredible how much clarity can emerge in those brief moments of quiet. Silence isn't just about internal emotional regulation. It's also an incredibly powerful tool in our interactions with others. When you're having a difficult conversation or a disagreement, staying silent can create space for the other person to fully express themselves. It shows that you're listening, that you're present. Often, people just need to be heard, and silence allows for that. There's also a tactical advantage to silence in negotiation and debate. Former FBI hostage negotiator Chris Voss emphasizes the power of silence in negotiations. When you remain silent after stating a point, it forces the other person to fill the silence, often revealing more information than they originally intended. Section 4. Silence as a creative catalyst. Silence is often the birthplace of creativity. Think about it. Some of the greatest artists, writers, and inventors have spoken about the importance of silence in their creative process. When our minds are constantly distracted by noise, it's difficult to tap into that well of creativity. But when we create moments of silence, we allow our brains to wander, to make connections, and to come up with new ideas. Author Susan Cain, in her book, Quiet: The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking, talks about the importance of solitude for creativity. She explains that some of the most groundbreaking ideas come not from group brainstorming sessions, but from individuals working in silence, free from distractions. Steve Jobs, the co-founder of Apple, was known for his long, silent walks. He believed that these moments of solitude were where some of his best ideas emerged. By embracing silence, he was able to think deeply about his projects and come up with innovative solutions. If you're someone who feels creatively stuck, I encourage you to introduce moments of silence into your routine. Set aside time each day to be alone with your thoughts, without distractions. You'll be amazed at how this simple practice can ignite your creativity. Section 5. The spiritual power of silence. Now let's turn to the spiritual aspect of silence. Many spiritual traditions emphasize the importance of silence as a way to connect with a higher power or with the universe. Whether you're religious or simply believe in something greater than yourself, silence can be a way to tap into that energy. In Christianity, silence is often seen as a way to hear the voice of God. Monks in the Benedictine tradition take vows of silence, believing that through silence, they can become closer to the divine. In Buddhism, silence is central to meditation practices, where practitioners sit in silence to achieve mindfulness and inner peace. In my own spiritual journey, I've found that practicing silence in nature has been one of the most profound ways to feel connected to something greater. There's something about sitting in a quiet forest or by the ocean with only the sounds of nature around you, that makes you feel deeply connected to the world and to the present moment. Section 6. Practical ways to introduce silence into your life. Now that we've explored the many benefits of silence, let's talk about practical ways you can incorporate it into your daily routine. The beauty of silence is that you don't need any special tools or equipment. You just need to make a conscious decision to carve out moments of quiet in your day. Now that we've explored the powerful impact of silence in various areas of life, from self-reflection to emotional resilience, from creativity to spiritual awakening, you might be wondering, how do I bring this power of silence into my everyday life? This is where it all comes together. We'll walk through practical steps so you can embrace silence in both subtle and intentional ways. Let's begin with the mornings. One of the most profound ways I've found to incorporate silence into my life is by creating a silent morning ritual. We've all experienced the rush of starting the day with alarms blaring, rushing through emails, or listening to podcasts on full blast to get us motivated. While that may give us a sense of productivity, we're often filling the space with unnecessary noise that clouds our mind before it even has time to wake up. Imagine starting your day in complete silence. No phone, no news, no distractions. Just you and the quiet. What would that feel like? I've started implementing 10 to 15 minutes of absolute silence right after I wake up. During this time, I either sit by the window with a cup of tea or stand on the balcony, just breathing and observing the world without engaging. At first, it was unsettling. My mind was racing, and I felt the pull to reach for my phone. But over time, I learned to enjoy this stillness. It became the calm before the storm of the day. And what surprised me the most was how clear and focused I felt afterward. My thoughts weren't jumbled, and I approached the day with a sense of purpose rather than reacting to whatever notifications came my way. Another way to introduce silence into your life is by taking mindful breaks during the day. We live in a fast-paced world where multitasking is praised and there's always something that demands our attention. But what if we could create small pockets of silence, even in the busiest of days? One method that has worked wonders for me is the practice of micro-meditations, brief moments of silence throughout the day, lasting anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes. These don't require a special space or position. You can practice them at your desk, in the car before a meeting, or even while walking to grab a coffee. Here's how it works. Whenever I start to feel overwhelmed or notice my focus slipping, I pause. I close my eyes and take 3 deep breaths. Inhale deeply, hold, and exhale slowly. During these moments, I don't think about my to-do list or the emails I haven't answered. I simply let myself sit in the silence. This intentional silence allows me to reset my mind. After a few minutes, I feel more grounded, and my productivity skyrockets when I return to my tasks. Research has shown that these short breaks, especially when combined with silence, can reduce stress and increase focus. According to a study published in the Journal of Cognitive Enhancement, even brief periods of meditation or silence can activate the brain's default mode network, which is responsible for problem solving and creativity. So these tiny silent moments are like mental power-ups that keep your brain fresh and ready to tackle challenges. One of the most transformative practices I've integrated into my life is the silent nature walk. For many of us, being in nature is already a calming experience. But when combined with intentional silence, it becomes something far deeper, almost meditative. Instead of listening to music or talking with someone while walking, you simply listen to nature and yourself. When I first started this practice, I would walk in the woods or by a lake without any distractions. No phone, no music, just me and the environment. The rustling of leaves, the chirping of birds, the feeling of wind on my skin, all of it became magnified. What's remarkable is that the absence of external noise allowed me to hear my own thoughts more clearly. It's as if the more I tuned into the silence around me, the more I tuned into myself. Science backs this up too. researchers at the Rochester Institute of Technology found that spending time in nature, particularly in quiet, natural environments, reduces cortisol levels, lowers blood pressure, and improves mood. It's no wonder that after my silent walks, I feel refreshed and more connected to myself. Here's an unexpected benefit of silence: becoming a better listener. We often think of conversations as a back-and-forth exchange of words, but silence plays an equally crucial role in communication. When you intentionally incorporate silence into conversations, you allow space for the other person to speak more fully and reflect on what they're saying. One of the most profound shifts in my relationships came when I started practicing active listening through silence. Instead of jumping in to share my opinion or offer advice immediately, I'd wait. I'd let the other person speak without interruption, giving them the time to express themselves completely. And when they finished speaking, I wouldn't rush to fill the silence. Instead, I'd pause, allowing the silence to settle before responding thoughtfully. This practice transformed my conversations. Not only did I understand the other person better, but they felt more heard and valued. I also found that when I took the time to reflect in silence before responding, my responses were more meaningful and constructive. Interestingly, this approach is supported by psychology. A study published in the Journal of Communication highlighted that silence in conversations promotes empathy, deepens understanding, and builds stronger emotional connections. The act of listening in silence creates trust and opens up opportunities for more authentic exchanges. Here's an area where silence can be both challenging and incredibly powerful: social settings. Whether we're at a dinner party, meeting, or even in casual conversations, we often feel pressured to keep talking, filling every gap with words. But what if we didn't? There's a special kind of strength in being comfortable with silence in social interactions. Silence doesn't have to be awkward. It can be a tool to create space for deeper thoughts and more meaningful dialogue. I remember a time when I was at a social gathering, and instead of jumping into the conversation with small talk, I chose to listen and observe. At first, I felt out of place because I wasn't constantly engaging, but then I realized that by remaining silent, I could actually contribute more when I did speak. My words had weight, and people listened more attentively. Silence is particularly powerful during arguments or heated discussions. In situations where emotions run high, choosing to stay silent rather than immediately reacting can diffuse tension. It's easy to say something you regret in the heat of the moment, but by giving yourself and the other person a moment of silence, you allow the conversation to de-escalate. We live in a hyper-connected world where the digital noise never stops. Notifications, social media, and endless content compete for our attention. One of the greatest gifts you can give yourself is digital silence, a break from the constant bombardment of information. Here's a practice I've implemented. I designate certain hours of the day as digital-free zones. During these times, I turn off my phone, avoid checking emails, and don't engage with social media. Instead, I use this time for reading, journaling, or simply sitting in silence. It was hard at first. My hand instinctively reached for my phone more times than I can count. But over time, I began to cherish these moments of digital silence. Without the distraction of notifications, I found that I could focus on the present moment more fully. Digital detoxes have become increasingly popular, and for good reason. Research from Harvard Medical School shows that constantly checking our devices can increase stress levels and disrupt our sleep. By consciously unplugging and embracing silence, we can reduce stress and improve our mental well-being. Section 7, Silence in a Noisy World, the Challenge and the Reward. Embracing silence in today's world is not easy. Noise is everywhere, on the streets, in our homes, and even in our minds. But the power of silence lies in the fact that it's a choice. You have the power to turn off the noise, both external and internal, and to embrace the quiet moments. In today's hyper-connected, constantly buzzing world, the idea of seeking silence can seem almost countercultural. We're conditioned to think that more noise, more information, and more activity lead to success. But the truth is, silence is where we find our deepest strength and clarity. It's not in the constant doing, but in the being that we discover who we truly are. Let's reflect for a moment on this. Silence, once seen as something uncomfortable or even lonely, is in fact a gift. It offers a kind of peace that can't be found through external noise. The challenge is in embracing that stillness, in stepping back from the noise when every part of modern life pushes us toward distraction. But here's the reward. When you practice silence, you gain power over your mind. You become more present, more aware, and more in control of your thoughts. You're no longer reacting to the world around you. You're choosing how to respond. Take, for example, the simple act of turning off the TV at the end of the day. Instead of filling the evening with background noise, you choose to sit quietly with your thoughts. You might feel restless at first, your mind racing, searching for something to latch onto. But if you sit with that discomfort, something beautiful happens. You start to notice the quality of your thoughts. You might discover patterns you weren't aware of. And over time, that restlessness gives way to calm. There's a certain stigma around being alone, especially in today's world where social connections are just a click away. We're told that solitude is something to be avoided, that being alone equates to loneliness. But nothing could be further from the truth. Solitude, when embraced, is one of the most powerful ways to recharge and reconnect with ourselves. Personally, some of my most profound moments of growth have come during times of intentional solitude. I've taken weekend retreats by myself, free from distractions, where I'd spend days in silence, journaling, and reflecting. At first, the silence was uncomfortable. Without the usual distractions, I was left alone with my thoughts. But as the hours passed, I began to notice the richness of the silence. It wasn't empty, it was full of potential, full of insights that only emerged because I allowed space for them to surface. In solitude, we come face to face with our inner world. We can confront the things we've been avoiding, but we can also discover aspects of ourselves that we never knew existed. And here's the thing, you don't need to go on a retreat to experience the power of solitude. It can be as simple as spending a quiet afternoon at home or taking a solo walk through the park. The key is to be intentional about it, to carve out time and space for yourself, free from distractions. In a study conducted by the University of Virginia, researchers found that people who spent just 15 minutes in solitude experienced lower stress levels and a greater sense of well-being. The researchers noted that this practice allowed individuals to gain perspective on their lives, fostering greater self-awareness and emotional balance. Solitude, then, isn't something to fear. It's something to embrace as a tool for self-discovery and growth. Here's something we don't often think about. Silence can be a form of resistance. In a world that's constantly trying to grab your attention, choosing silence is an act of defiance. It's saying, I refuse to be consumed by the noise. It's a way of taking back control over your own mind and space. When we look at social media, news outlets, or even our day-to-day conversations, it's clear that there's a constant demand for our attention. We're told what to think, how to feel, and what to care about. But when you practice silence, you create a boundary between yourself and the external world. You give yourself the space to think for yourself, to come to your own conclusions, and to decide what truly matters to you. Think of the great leaders and thinkers throughout history. Many of them were known for their periods of quiet contemplation. Figures like Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., and even Albert Einstein understood the power of stepping back from the noise to reflect deeply. They knew that silence wasn't a weakness, but a strength. It allowed them to tap into their inner wisdom and emerge with clarity and purpose. In your own life, silence can be a way of resisting the pressures of society. It can be a way of saying, I won't be defined by the noise around me. Instead, you choose to define yourself on your own terms, in the quiet moments of reflection. At this point, we've explored silence from a practical, emotional, and psychological perspective. But there's another layer to silence that we haven't yet touched on, the spiritual dimension. For centuries, spiritual traditions across the world have recognized the transformative power of silence. In many ways, silence is the gateway to the divine. Whether through meditation, prayer, or simply sitting in stillness, silence allows us to connect with something greater than ourselves. It's in the quiet that we can hear the whispers of our soul, and for some, the voice of the divine. In Buddhism, for example, silence is seen as a path to enlightenment. By quieting the mind through meditation, practitioners are able to transcend the chatter of the ego and connect with a deeper sense of presence. Similarly, in Christian mysticism, silence is often regarded as a way of communing with God. It's in the stillness that believers feel the presence of the divine most profoundly. Even if you don't subscribe to a particular religious tradition, there's something undeniably spiritual about silence. It invites us to tap into a sense of awe and wonder. It allows us to step outside of the chaos of everyday life and remember that we are part of something much larger. One of the most powerful experiences I've had in silence was during a silent retreat. It was a week-long retreat, with no talking, no phones, no distractions. At first, it was difficult to adjust. My mind was constantly racing, searching for something to latch onto. But as the days passed, I began to settle into the stillness. By the end of the week, I felt a profound sense of peace, unlike anything I had experienced before. It was as if I had tapped into a wellspring of inner calm that had always been there, but I had never given myself the space to access it. As we reach the conclusion of this journey, it's clear that silence is not just the absence of noise. It's the presence of something far greater. It's the space where we find clarity, strength, and a deep connection to ourselves and the world around us. Silence is power, not because of what it lacks, but because of what it allows. It allows us to see more clearly, to feel more deeply, and to act more intentionally. In a world that's constantly pulling us in 1,000 different directions, silence is our anchor. It's the place where we come back to ourselves, where we remember who we are and what truly matters. So, as you move forward, I invite you to embrace the power of silence in your own life. Create moments of quiet throughout your day. Step away from the noise, both external and internal, and give yourself the gift of stillness. You'll be amazed at the transformation that happens when you allow silence to be part of your daily routine. You'll find that you're more present, more focused, and more in tune with yourself. And in that stillness, you'll discover the power that's been there all along, the power of silence. Call to action. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to pause. Reflect on how you can bring more silence into your life. Whether it's through morning rituals, mindful breaks, or moments of solitude, commit to giving yourself that space. Let me know in the comments. How do you plan to embrace silence? What does silence mean to you? And if you found value in this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content on personal growth and self-improvement. Stay grounded, stay intentional, and remember, silence is power.